Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we have to get some projects done. We got to take care of this roll over here. So today, we're going to try and get taken care of. We're going to get started on this rack here. You guys saw in the last video that we did showed you how to make that really Gucci cool new background. Well, I got the other one in the other bigger tank. So they're going to be side by side. They're totally twins. And then we've also got the 10 gallons on the bottom rack. A little change of plans and a little hiccup. So let's get to it. So the rack is all in place. Everything so far is seemingly fine. We have one little minor issue which I'll touch base on in a second. The one thing I did do is I did add a sheet of some 3/4 inch plywood that I happen to have on hand. I think I mentioned that in the last video, and then we put the styrofoam in between there because these are solid glass bottom tanks. These are not all frame tanks like these ones here. This one I did go and pick up a small sheet of, I believe it's 1/2 inch or 5/8 plywood, same styrofoam, and then the tanks. Now, as you guys remember, we did this tank here. This is the one that we installed the background in the video. I filled it up with straight reverse osmosis water, and I didn't add anything to it whatsoever. This one here, I wanted to really let it really sit. I wanted to make sure that the background didn't crumble, and I really wanted to have a good test before I went and did the second one. And this has still been sitting. I just haven't emptied it. There's no reason to really do anything yet, but I'm going to drain the tank when we go to fill it up. So the tank has been sitting, and water chemistry has been stable the whole time. pH, hardness, general hardness, carbon hardness, everything's been totally stable. So I'm totally sold on using these backgrounds for these tanks. I've gone and installed the second one, so this tank can now just be flipped over, and then we'll have the two side by side. Then we have the 10 gallons on the bottom. There's the 3 10 gallons, and then there's a fourth. The only problem being, and it's just a slight mismeasurement on my part, or I never use, because every once in a while, a 10-gallon tank, depending on where it's from, can be slightly different measurements in regards to the frames. So I just kind of went online because I didn't have a 10-gallon on hand, and I went and found out kind of the standard measurements. And the problem with the standard measurements is they're not necessarily measuring from trim to trim. They may be measuring from tank to tank. So I am off by just not even 1/8 of an inch. As you can see there, it's going to bind ever so slightly there, and at the bottom as well. So what I'm going to have to do is on one side, I just have to shave it down ever so slightly to make sure that the tanks fit. Not only just fit it so it's super snug, I want to fit it that there is a little bit of room because glass will distort a little bit under pressure. So I want to make sure that those work. So that's number one. The other thing I've gone and done is I've already gone and installed the plug bar. We've got lighting options for the bottom one. I've got an LED strip. I've got lighting options for the top one. And for the tanks, I've also gone and gotten some heaters. I had a whole bunch of heaters. So I've got heaters for all 6 tanks. And then I was debating on what I wanted to do. Now, I've been telling you guys that I want to run these tanks. Like, you guys know my other tanks, when I run these ones, they're all running really, fairly high tech with a custom-made DIY wet-dry filter, 100% oxygen saturation. Well, the fish in question, I don't know if I've alluded to it or not, but I want to go what I call back is to old school aquatics. I want to keep some oddball Characins, maybe unique barbs, Killifish, Anabantoids, such as different mouth-brooding betas, and some of the weird Grammies, particularly the Valiente Grammy, the Samurai Grammy, as well as chocolate Grammys, which I have not seen since like the mid-'80s. I know they're available, but I just have not seen them. So I really want to do old school aquatics in these ones. So old school aquatics calls for old school filtration. Now I was originally thinking I could put little box filters or something like that, but I thought, nope. And remember I was also talking about how I wanted to put those backgrounds in the backs of the 10-gallon tanks? Well, instead of that option in the 10-gallon tanks, we are going to go with Hamburg matte filters. So here's the jet lifter tubes. These are the air tubes. You attach the air line. This goes in behind. Who doesn't have a tub full of these? Everybody's got tubs full of these. So I think I'm going to run on the old school hydro sponges. Now I know when I say old school, this isn't really old school. Biggs, if you're going to go old school, you should have gone and put like a box filter with charcoal and the floss. And yeah, that would work too. But I've got air. I've got a big central pump. So I'm going to go and use a couple of the hydro pumps. I'm going to have to put a small little manifold somewhere in here. Now, originally, I'm going to also be putting a shelf out here. It's going to attach directly below the wood there, and it's going to come out to about here. I have it downstairs here somewhere already, I believe. Yep, I got a little project pine panel. and that's going to be attached. I just haven't figured out how I want to attach it, because I don't really have any room to attach brackets that are going to support the shelf very much, because I do want to use that shelf to extend the growing space for the plants that are above, maybe putting some lightweight vivariums. But as you can see, I don't have any space to put any verticals to suspend the shelf on either side because they're nice and snug. Poor design feature, Biggs. You should have done better. We expected better. I know, but that's the way it is. So just like we did in this tank here, when we took some of the substrate out, the gravel and stuff, and we added in some of that awesome JBL river sand, it really gave it a much different look. Well, in this tank here, when I was talking about these specific backgrounds, I had a very, very set kind of look in mind as well. I want to dabble in using some of the different botanicals. I'll probably end up using a fair bit of planting and stuff. And even for because they're going to be primarily breeding habitats, is I'll probably end up setting most of the plants up in pots. But I ended up going back to my good friend at Aficionados and picking up that one that it's called orange, but it's really a nice yellow color. And you can really see it against the background, how it just absolutely works perfectly with it. I think it's going to look awesome. And this is a substrate that he said looks absolutely identical, reminiscent of when he was collecting fish in Suriname. So, you know, when we're talking about black water type of habitats, weird tetras and characins, barbs from Asia, killifish, any of that sort of stuff, I think this type of a substrate is going to look absolutely awesome. Now, I am going to put that in the top 2 tanks. I don't know if we're going to put it in the bottom tanks, but bottom line, we're going to have to get this little tank, got to get that set up there, make some sort of little notches, get that tank in place, run the air, and let's get this rack going. All right, here's where we ended up after the first day, on and off. Styrofoam's back in place. And we made this cool shelf. That's that project panel. We cut off 2 inches. I buttressed it in the front so it's nice and clean edge on the front. And this will be able to extend the growing for the plants, and we'll be able to do some bottle vivariums. It's well supported underneath. I just made some brackets just using cut a 2x4 from corner to corner and made 2 brackets that'll hold it up there. It'll hold the weight of anything that we want to put on here. I'm not going to be planning on putting a 70-gallon tank or anything up here, but any of these little bottle vivariums and stuff like that and continuing some of the plants, I think it'll work great. I ended up having to rub some stain into it, just use some of the stain that I had on hand, something that would kind of match. You notice some of the stains are not matching anymore because I was using all PT brown, and when you get it from different sources, the colors aren't exactly the same. We ended up after the first day. Everything's good to go, most part. We've got lighting installed on this one here. I was going to install lighting from above, but I had this beautiful little LED fixture. It fits perfectly on the tanks. We've got the substrate in. The tanks are a little milky right now just because of disturbed substrate. Lids are all in place. I've got the heaters for the first 3. The last one I left out because of the particular type of fish I'm looking at possibly carrying. I do have another LED fixture here that's ready to go. The only thing is I'm missing the piggyback. I know I'm not missing it somewhere in all my stuff, but we'll find that will work perfectly for that one. And the next stage is we'll start going through maybe the tank out there, and we'll get some of the plants and stuff out of there. We'll get these things started planted up. But for today, that's a good start. Pretty happy. So with that, my friends, till next video, take care.